Welcome to Gold Shields. Join NYPD veterans Tom Smith and Dan Murphy. With over 50 years of combined experience chasing drug lords, dismantling cartels, and hunting terrorists. Now they pull back the curtain, sharing raw, unfiltered stories from the front lines and the heroes who stood beside them. No topics off limits. This is real. This is true crime. This is Gold Shields.
As active as well as retired police officers, we all know that you can buy gear from a lot of different places, especially online. But I want to remind you of the importance of supporting companies that support law enforcement. And I don't know a company that fits the bill more than Goals. Their motto is proud to serve those who serve, which they do every single day. And they walk the talk by supporting dozens of public safety-focused organizations like Gold Shields. So when you are looking for gear, support our sponsor and go to goals.com. And Goals has done something special for our listeners. Go to goals.com and use the promo code GOLD15 and receive 15% off the next purchase you make. That offer is good until July 31st. Make sure you go to goals.com. Support them any way you can. Use the promo code GOLD15 and get a special 15% off your purchase.
Hey, welcome back to Gold Shields. This is Dan Murphy along with my partner in crime, Tom Smith. How are you today, buddy?
I'm doing great, man. Another good show coming up. That's for damn sure.
Yep, we're very excited about our guest today. So, Tom, without further ado, why don't you introduce him to our audience?
Yeah, you know what? When you think of the elites in this country and the elites in law enforcement, no matter what it might be, state, federal, or whatever, protecting the president of the United States has to be at the top of the list. And we're going to talk to a guy who did it for 5 different presidents, which is, 1, 2, that's impressive. 5, that's pretty wild.
Insane.
And the willingness to step in front of something that's a danger to that individual and accepting that role makes a very special person. And we're going to get into that and a lot more, today. And we can't wait. It's going to be awesome with Scott Bryson. It's a pleasure, my friend. Thank you for joining us on Gold Shields.
Thank you, gentlemen, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Scott, when we talk about Secret Service, we've had Secret Service folks on the show before. Tom and I have worked hand in hand with them in the past many times, and we have a great deal of respect. The public doesn't really know everything the Secret Service does. They think they do. They have a small glimpse of it. They see the movies and everything. But tell us about the mindset, the hours, the halls and walls, the moves, the different hotels all around the world. This is not a young man's or a very easy person's job, is it? The protective detail, is it?
No, it's definitely a young man's game. That's why I could still be doing it, but I got out pretty much the day I was eligible. I had a great career. I did 25 full years. I'm 53, and of course, they force you out at 57, so I still have buddies that are on the job, but you hit the nail on the head. It's definitely a young man's game.
And it is because of the amount of hours. It's not even the hours. That's a part of it. But all of us in law enforcement, Scott, we always talk about the other factors that go into it. Not only are you working long hours, but your stress level of a absolute no-fail policy brings even more to the demand of what you do all the time, protecting your protectees, no matter who it might be. But that whole other part, people don't understand that stressful part of it. Not sleeping, not eating, being in different time zones is one thing. But the stress factor and what has to be on your mind all the time just contributes to the eliteness of the Secret Service.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And both of you gentlemen know what I'm talking about when I say the body's meant to be asleep at night. I was a police officer for 2 years before I went to the Secret Service, and we rotated shifts. So just being up all night in any, nurses do it, law enforcement does it. Protection, as you know, is a 24/7 job. The thing I loved about the Secret Service, probably more than anything, were the men and women that I worked with. I really missed the camaraderie from the police department, which I ended up finding later in the job when I went to President's Detail, my counter assault team and things like that. I had played college football, so I'm always like a team mindset guy. And so I just really was looking for that. And that's what I enjoyed about it. There are many, many things that Secret Service agents do that don't make the movies. They always show the sexy stuff. They don't show the midnights in the stairwells and then they try to get home. I used to live out in Northern Virginia, and I don't know how many times I almost fell asleep trying to get home from a 12-hour shift on the Eastern Shore when I was working on the CAT team. And we'd have to go over and supplement Dick Cheney's detail or something like that. So there's all kind of little nuancy things that we can get into. I'll be happy to talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. But I think for me, the thing that really stood out the most as far as Secret Service agents go, I'm a conservative-minded guy, but I have friends that are left of center. And generally speaking, at least my era of people, my vintage, guys were able to compartmentalize, and it didn't matter which president was in office, Republican or Democrat, white or black. It just didn't matter because you were protecting the leader of the free world, and guys were really good at leaving their politics at home.
It's great that you say that because you want to see that in all levels of law enforcement. Tom and I dealt with the vast majority of people we dealt with in our career were just that. They were agnostic when it came to political beliefs influencing their work. We haven't always seen that. I think publicly we've seen some examples that are not that. But going back to the Secret Service for a second, I think what the public really doesn't quite grasp, and it really took me a while to grasp this too, until a friend of mine who was Secret Service for his career, who you probably know, we'll talk about later, told me something. He said, our mission is such that it influences the stability of the entire world. As the stability of leadership of the United States goes the stability of the world. Because if we have a vacuum of leadership because of a tragic incident that happened on Secret Service's watch, the world goes nuts. The bad actors go bad. People sense weakness. The markets, everything changes, which is part of the reason why what happened in Parkland at the hospital happened back years ago with John F. Kennedy. The need for the Secret Service to maintain the continuity of leadership at the president rank, and it's their responsibility to make things happen should something go bad. That's a massive responsibility. How much did they tell you about that and acquaint you with that during training to have that mindset to understand that?
That's a great question, and I don't think that gets talked about enough for young guys. I was 26 or 27. I can't remember exactly when I came on. You get talked to about the moving and the divorce rate and how you're going to miss. If it exists, we all missed it, right? I know you guys did too as cops, right? If it's Christmas morning or an anniversary, I mean, pretty much if it exists, we all missed it, right? So you get coached up on that stuff. But as far as like the OJT, the on-the-job training stuff, that just comes with experience and time. And I think it almost bleeds over into the mental health aspect of the job that doesn't get talked about very much, which I think is vitally important.
Yeah, Dan brought up a great point. I remember the conversation that he's referring to of the chaos that was going on in Dallas that day, and listening to how the individual we were talking to learned that, yes, you had a president who was dead, but that got kind of put to the side like, all right, there's nothing we can do about that right now. We have to move the country forward and the world forward. And it's a bunch of agents doing that. It's not elected officials. It's not, anyone who has a place in government. It was the agents on the ground that had to make sure that was going on. And that is a enormous responsibility, like Dan said. So here's my question leading up to that. With you being out and, we're talking about, the assassination of JFK, so far, the most recent one is the one on Donald Trump, our president now. What was your view that day, looking at it now, not being involved, but from kind of a 30,000-foot altitude of it like we do? What was your whole read of that whole situation and day?
Yeah. I retired in October of 2022. And of course, you'd have to be a psychopath to want something to happen, right? But like none of us ever want anything to happen. A boring day of the Secret Service is a good day. It makes for a long day, but you want it to be boring. However, you train and it's an intangible thing that you can't really articulate. You just have it inside of you. I think law enforcement in general is a calling, like being a doctor or a preacher, I think is a calling. And so you don't want anything to happen, but you know that the laws of average are going against you, right? Like I like to talk about Murphy. Murphy's an SOB. He's always after us. And if something happens, I want to be working. And I felt like a gut punch. I was sick on my stomach because at first, when I thought he was dead, I mean, take a headshot, I thought he was dead. And I just completely felt sick on my stomach. Not only because he's the leader of the free world, and all the points that you just made are so important and accurate. But for me, I'm close with the family, which Secret Service management probably doesn't like to hear, but it is what it is. I was the detail leader for Eric Trump for almost a year and a half living in New York City. And you can't separate that human element. You spend that much time with an individual, you're going to hate each other, you're going to gravitate toward each other. And Eric Trump and his family are such amazing people. And the point I'm making to that is the apple doesn't fall far from the tree in any home. And so Donald Trump gets a little bit of a bad rep, in my opinion. He loves our country, and he loves the military. He loves law enforcement. He loves, even if he didn't, he's still the leader of the free world. Like, I wasn't a big Joe Biden fan, but I didn't want anything. I think this is what separates us from them. I don't want to see something bad happen to Kamala Harris or Joe Biden. But I don't think the other side can say that very honestly, right? I just remember, sorry, I didn't mean to get off on a diatribe, but I wanted to get that out there because I just felt sick on my stomach is about basically the best way to say that. And I just was like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have been there. Of course, I'd been retired, and the likelihood of me being working that day is slim to none anyway, but you feel helpless. And I think most of us are type A individuals, and we're helpers and we're doers. I'm always trying to fix it, and you can't fix that, right? As a guy who wants to make it, because a lot of responsibilities put on the working agent. You talked about it a minute ago. I eventually got promoted, and I was a GS-14, but above that's a GS-15, and of course SES. But right below that's the GS-13, and that's the journeyman, and that is the person. And I'm going to catch some blowback for this, but that's the person that's running the Secret Service by and large. We put a lot of responsibility on the senior GS-13. The FBI would never let a GS-13 go out and do a lead advance. It would be a 15, I guarantee it. So for a journeyman, like basically an NCO, right, for the military folks, that's a lot of responsibility put on a person with 10 or 12 years on the job. You're creating the security plan for the leader of the free world. And I just remember feeling sick on my stomach. And the thing that really pissed me off is I had done multiple assignments. I'd been the close protection guy. I had done the counter assault team. I had done the counter surveillance unit. There were no counter surveillance guys working that day, that, to my knowledge. And if they would have been working, which is the plainclothes guys, I believe in my heart of hearts that they would have either killed the guy or arrested him, and none of this would happen. So the fact that the CSU guys were not working is a complete head scratcher. This guy was 130 yards away. It's completely unacceptable.
People that we know that we've talked to who are retired from the Secret Service have told us, off the air, basically, that and there's a lot of things that happen that they don't have answers for, that they don't understand. And I would like to think that our government at the highest levels now is looking into that, and we'll get some answers for the American public. They deserve it. That level of chaos during a presidential campaign, that close to dying, it's unacceptable. But I hate to throw anything out without knowing. So I'm going to await for investigative results. Frankly, we don't get up here and bash cops or agents. We want to know the truth behind everything. So thank you for sharing your opinion on that. Let's go back to your career for a second, though. You served 5 presidents in the protective service. Tell us about the first one. Let's start and talk a little bit about each of them, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem. So I was permanently assigned to 3. So the Secret Service has different phases, as you guys probably know, but your audience doesn't. Phase 1, you start off in the field office and you're an investigator. And so I was lucky enough to start off in my hometown of Charlotte, North Carolina. And so when you're doing investigative work, you go on TDYs, temporary duties, and that was during, I guess, yeah, Bill Clinton era. So Bill Clinton and Al Gore were in office. So I did some protective detail work for them as a temporary post stander type guy. I was never permanently assigned to them, but I did get permanently assigned to George W. Bush for almost 6 years. I was with Obama for only 2 days because I was on orders. A lot of times people were like, they think that you rotate with the president, but your career path is your career path, right? So it's just timing. It's got nothing to do with incoming or outgoing president. I had spent almost 6 years with President Bush, and I had gotten transferred. So as you know, it takes the government gives you 120 days to relocate. And so the timing on that just worked out where I was with Obama for 2 days. And then I went overseas. I got really lucky. I got an overseas assignment. And then I came back to D.C. During the Trump era. Sorry, these guys run together. Come back to the Trump era, and I got promoted. And then I was with Trump for 3 years as a supervisor. And then I rotated off and went to Hawaii, which I know you feel sorry for me for that. And I was stationed over there when Biden was in. And I feel like I've missed one along the way. But I started in 1997. So from Bill Clinton all the way up through Biden is what I did.
That's amazing. I mean, what a run. I mean, Dan, how many guys have we talked to that you had 1 or 2? I mean, 5 is a run. That's something. So the question always comes up, and a couple of times we asked other Secret Service guys we've had on, not to give a name up, but was there a favorite?
When it comes to the safety of law enforcement, first responders, and military personnel, every moment counts, especially in the dark. Streamlight provides the reliable, high-performance lighting solutions that these heroes trust in the most dangerous situations, whether it's a car stop, navigating dark alleyways, or exploring abandoned buildings. With Streamlight by their side, our heroes can tackle challenges with confidence, knowing they have the power of advanced lighting technology to guide them. From the first responders on the front lines to the law enforcement officers ensuring our safety, Streamlight is there to make every mission a little easier and much safer. Join us in supporting those who protect us. Visit Streamlight.com to discover how you can be part of the team keeping our heroes safe. Because when they shine, we all shine.
Have you ever wished you could go back in time and see the events that shape the true crime cases that fascinate you? With newspapers.com, it's like having a time machine to the past. Dive into more than 1 billion newspaper pages from 1690 to 2025 and relive the headlines that shocked entire towns. Explore newspapers from the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and beyond with a simple search. Read the breaking news as it happened, crime scene reports, witness testimonies, and courtroom drama. Explore forgotten clues and see how the media shaped the narrative of infamous cases. But it's not just the major stories. Newspapers.com lets you dig into local mysteries, missing persons reports, and the small-town scandals that history forgot. It's the closest you can get to being there when it all unfolded. So, if you're ready to dig deeper into the crimes that keep you up at night, start your journey today at newspapers.com. Use the code GOLDSHIELDS for an exclusive 20% discount on your subscription.
Well, I already kind of let the cat out of the bag. I will tell you this. Prior to spending so much time with the Trump family, I would say that Laura Bush, president, we affectionately referred to the two Bushes as 41 and 43, not disrespectfully, but like that's just a mouthful to say. So 41 and 43, and they called themselves that too. So I was with 43 for almost 6 years. And his wife, I didn't spend a ton of time with her because I wasn't on the First Lady's detail, but she was a sweet woman. She's a librarian. She's a former librarian, and she was probably my favorite protectee just because she was so kind and just nice, just genuinely nice and pleasant. Then, you get thrust into the regime, the machine, I guess I should have said, the PPD machine as a supervisor, and I had to go live in New York, which you guys know all too well about. And I was knee deep in everything all day, every day with Eric Trump, who and his wife Laura are just amazing human beings. I like the whole family, but I'm very biased. Eric's just the salt of the earth kind of guy. And so Eric and Laura are my one seed.
So we've heard rumors, and maybe you can confirm or deny, that when Hillary Clinton was the first lady, she would frequently stay up late making cookies for you guys and write handwritten notes to your kids and send plush dolls home for them. That's true, right?
I feel like there may be a little sarcasm in there, but let me just say this. I was never permanently assigned to the Clinton White House, okay? Let's just keep it there.
Okay, all right. Just checking. I mean, it's rumor.
I heard the same stories.
So let me ask you this, and hearing your story about the Bushes and 43 and being with him for so long, we're going to ask you what Dan and I get asked about a lot. The day that changed the world, 9/11. Where were you then? What was going on in your world in the Secret Service and protecting details on that day?
2001, I was the father of three. We had just had our third child. I had actually taken the older. He was a baby, so he was born in February, so he was just 6 months old or whatever, and he was homesick. My wife was homesick with him, and I had taken my oldest to daycare, and I had stopped at the grocery store to get some eardrops or whatever it was. And I'll never forget. I was on my way to work. Obviously, I was standing in line to pay, and the older, like an older guy, probably 70-something years old, just working part-time or whatever, bagging the groceries, came up and he's the one that told me, and I had no idea what he was talking about. And for your audience to put it in perspective, like this is way before technology, and like I had a pager, and I had to stop at a what do you call it, a payphone and call in, right? We didn't have technology like we have today. So I got home as fast as I could, dropped off the medicine, and then got to the Charlotte. I was still stationed in the Charlotte field office. So I got to the Charlotte field office, which was heavily, the management there was basically all former New Yorkers, the special agent in charge, not the ASAC, but a couple of the ATSACs, like heavy New York representation. It was kind of a joke. We called it Manhattan South. But those guys were we were all obviously glued to the television, and it really hit close to home for those guys because they're all from there. And it was just, again, that's the only time I ever really felt hopeless, other than when I saw the Trump thing, right? And I was on the job, but I was stationed in Charlotte. I mean, I couldn't do anything. I think everybody probably felt the same way. You're helpless. And for people like us, that doesn't sit well.
No, it absolutely doesn't. And Tom and I, we can talk all day about this, as we could probably compare notes with everybody that we worked with who was involved that day, and everybody was. And the days passed. It did feel like a gut punch. It did feel like somebody's holding your arms back and wailing away in your stomach, and you can't do a thing about it. But you guys had the responsibility collectively as an agency of ensuring the continuity of leadership during a world-changing event. The president had to move around that day quite a bit, and he finally agreed to come back. What was the posturing like at the White House and then around Washington once he came back?
Again, I think I'd been on the job about 3 years at that point. So I was so young, I didn't really know that. I didn't know what I didn't know, right? So I can talk a little bit about it now intelligently because I've been around the block a few times. But I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't really in the mix on all that stuff. I just know that I ended up working with and for some guys later in my career that were working that day. And so I kind of heard their stories firsthand. That's why I know I can talk about it intelligently, because they were actually on the working shift. They are the ones that went to Nebraska or wherever the heck they went. I can't remember, but and got escorted by F-15s or F-16s, whatever it was, back then. And it was just, we were in uncharted territory, right? And I think the one thing I really liked about Bush, aside from politics, or forget the politics where you agree with him or didn't agree with him, WMD, whatever, the man is he's just a man's man, which we can talk about in a minute if you want to. But the point is, and I didn't know this about him then, but I would later find out, he's a man's man. And he was like, you know what, by God, I'm going back. I'm not, we kind of did what we needed to do we did some EA procedures or whatever, but now it's time to get home. And so I just always found it highly respectful that he went back to the Oval and gave that speech. I think it was that night, if I'm correct. And that just, he's like, I don't know, that's going to, like, to me, that's leading from the front, and that's what I gravitate toward.
Yeah, and I think he did, and I think your assessment's correct, and people need to put aside the other stuff, when it comes to that day and that week, what he did. And I think his leadership as a man, like you said, came through with wanting to go back to DC and giving the address that night. And then I remember I don't even think it was a week later, he gave the kind of a State of the Union address. It was one of the most highly rated shows on TV at that time, that everyone watched it. And that's not easy to do when your country gets attacked, to sit up there and be that leader. No one plans for that. Like you said, Scott, that's not in the playbook. What happened that day is in the playbook. But I think he did a great job as well. What I got asked, and actually a question to ask you, was, we see what we see. The public sees the Secret Service doing, what they're doing. How many actual quote unquote emergencies are there in a given day when you're doing a protection? I mean, there's got to be, because I equate it to like an airplane pilot. There's stuff going on in that cockpit, and thankfully we're in the regular seats, not knowing a damn thing. How much of that goes on?
Well, two-part answer, if that's okay. So, the first part of this answer is I did, and I can't get into details because I just don't want to go to prison. But, I was a part of one, like, EA event, emergency action, event, when I was a young working agent, again, assigned to President Bush's detail. Because after 9/11, there were things put into place that just weren't into place, because you can't think of everything. Like, you can't make this stuff up. If I was writing a movie, I would have probably never thought of that, right? So the FAA got heavily involved in some different things, and so there were protocols put into place regarding aircraft, kind of taking the guessing game out of it. It was like a chart with speed and all the distance, all the things. So it's kind of a chart. It takes the thinking out of it. And so once the supervisor makes the decision, you're not thinking about it. You're doing it, right? And so I did that one time. We had an inbound aircraft. This was in 2003. So this was not, this was 2 years later, 2003, 2004, probably 2003, I think. So we're less than 2 years out. And so we're all, your spidey senses are way up when you have a 777 inbound to Reagan National. If anybody knows anything about DC, the airport's right across. It's not far. And so you're talking about minutes. You don't have the luxury of time, right? And so, of course, you're going to get armchair quarterbacks, but you're having to make real-time decisions. So we went through the evacuation process, and then by the time we kind of were about to leave property, the guy started talking, and so we were able to come back down. But so I was a part of one EA situation in my 6 years there as a worker bee. But I will tell you that I got to see behind the curtain, unfortunately, when I became a supervisor on the detail. So the White House complex is run by the Joint Operations Center, the JOC. And as the guy in the hot seat, so it's kind of co-run with you and the JOC lieutenant and the uniform guy. And so you guys are on the hot seat for your 8-hour shift. And let me just say, there are multiple problems every day. I kind of felt like the Wizard of Oz, and I didn't like it. I didn't like one thing about it. Every shift was miserable. I didn't care if it was days, evenings, or midnights. It was absolutely miserable. I did that for 8 months, and I am convinced it took years off of my life.
It sounds like being a desk sergeant in a busy New York City police precinct. And those of us that have done that have the scars to go along with it, because you're responsible for a lot. And a lot can go wrong, and sometimes it does. Being perhaps the highest profile public figure in the world, maybe the Pope is close, or vice versa, but the President of the United States is someone that attracts all sorts of attention. There's people who love him or her politically, people who love what they're doing, people that hate what they're doing. And then there's the nuts. Then there's the lunatics, the people who are threatening, the people who are sending bizarre communications. You guys deal with a lot of that, don't you?
Yeah, the one thing I do say, the Secret Service has some issues, like anybody else, right? But the thing the Secret Service really does well is they're very thorough. And that was my experience, whether it's advanced work out on the road, very, very thorough. And then, of course, that bleeds over into your protective intelligence world, right? And I will tell you, your listeners this, if you think you're going to be a keyboard warrior and get away with something, you're not. They track every IP address. They're pinging all kinds of stuff. So yeah, they take every single threat very seriously. I've been out on multiple, calls where it's like, something crazy was said, and maybe it was because the guy was mixing some alcohol with his medicine, or maybe he was off his medicine. Then you have to go out in the field like, okay, well, this is an 87-year-old vet. He's in a wheelchair. He can't. He made the comment, but he can't do it. So there's really no, but you don't know that till you go out. They take every single threat very seriously, and it's investigated completely, very thorough.
So let that be a message to those of you who are out there. It's okay to exercise your First Amendment rights. It's not okay to threaten the president. It's not okay to issue your manifesto about how you want to overthrow the government. These things are just not acceptable.
Yeah, and you're not getting away with it.
You're not going to get away with it.
No, you're not. I mean, we even see it on our level, when we talk about just homicides, robberies or whatever, they think they're going to get away with it. And the technology that we have, they don't, much less a completely different level of what the Secret Service has and the resources that you have. If you can't do it, you're going to find someone who can. That's for sure. We tasted that in JTTF. If we couldn't do it, pop the Rolodex open, you're going to find someone who can.
Well, the thing, too, I should have said a second ago was back in the day, think about, I'm going to date all of us a little bit here, but like think about Reagan, right? That was John Hinckley. That was a lone gunman, the lone wolf, whatever. We used to be worried about the jackal or the lone wolf, right? That's what we would call it. Back in the 70s, for those old enough to remember, there was a young lady named Squeaky Fromm, and she shot at Gerald Ford twice within like 17 days or 21 days, some crazy. Here's the catch-22. Like let's say you two guys I make some type of crazy threat, and then you guys come out and interview me. Well, you don't have a crystal ball, and you're not Jesus Christ. So if I'm lying to you, you're only as good as what you know. And then 17 days later, I do this. So you're completely in a trick bag, and you do the best you can, and sometimes it's just not good enough.
It can seem like a crapshoot, but there is a quasi-science to it, as you know, a pseudoscience, the threat assessment that has been developed. The Secret Service does it the best in the world. And it has to do with looking at the nature of, well, first of all, the person who's making it, who's issuing it, or who is posing that threat, right? These are complex issues, though. How you approach them has been so professional, and we don't hear about it. The public doesn't hear about it, and that's your success story, right?
It really is. And in fact, I know firsthand that the Secret Service came up with a pretty thorough document for it's called a threat assessment. And that I also know that local police departments and sheriff's offices use that same, basically that document that was created. I think it was created for them for threat assessments for students, which is a whole nother, another topic. But I think the point is the thoroughness of the document and the questioning. I don't think people don't wake up at 21 years old and just are off. It starts when they're young. So trying to catch some of these telltale signs earlier, even in grade school, which is kind of crazy to have to say out loud, but it is, right? And I think it gets down to sometimes it's a mental health disorder, not always, but and you're not going to catch everything, because if a person's quiet and keeps to themselves, you're not going to know. But as you guys know, criminals like to talk, and that's how a lot of these cases are solved. So, but I do think that it takes good investigators, and it takes that self-motivator, that type A individual that doesn't need a lot of, there's a difference between leadership and management too, by the way, which I'm sure you both agree with. But it doesn't take a lot of prodding. It takes a self-starter, and you have to have the right people in the right spots.
I'm glad you bring that up because I was actually his supervisor in 2 different commands, and I tried to lead him, but I could never manage him.
You contained me. You managed me.
I tried to contain you. That's not an easy task. He was, yeah.
There were sometimes I was like, Dan, listen, I'll be right back. You're the sergeant. Stay here. You're not comfortable with us. We'll be right back.
Nil of possible deniability.
Yeah. So we did do that a couple of times. But you know what? I think you're right, Scotty. You know, you have to have, I don't care what anyone says because it's a real thing. And the 3 of us have felt it and dealt with it. There is a sixth sense when it comes to police work. There is. There's that gut instinct. There's that, no, that person's lying. We need to set up on him, when every indication was that nothing's going on. Everything's fine. And we've all had it. We've all looked in someone's eyes and just went, they're lying. We need to watch them. And a lot of times it works out. And I think, you know, the young cops have to learn that is a real thing that I think you already have already. It's just a matter of educating it and maturing it enough to realize when it's working. But I think that's one thing that young cops today, we get asked all the time. That I think that little trigger they're missing, and that I would love to see come back into police work. You know, it's like you know, analytics in baseball. You know, sometimes you just got to watch and then make a decision. And I think it's the same thing in law enforcement.
No, I think so too. And not to throw shade on the younger generation, because I have 3 kids in their 20s and they're doing good. They're out there working hard. And I think sometimes Gen Z and what do you call them? The millennials, they get a bad rep, and sometimes they deserve it. But I think part of the problem is, to your point, is technology has, when I was a police officer, I didn't have an MCT in my car. I didn't even have a phone. I mean, it's like everything, paper tickets, right? So I think technology and now AI is just making it that much worse. And so I just think these kids grew up with technology. I made it through college and I didn't even have a computer. And my kids are like, what? I'm like, no, it was called a typewriter.
Yeah, when I first started doing investigations in the Manhattan Warrant Squad, we had royal typewriters, manual typewriters. You had to push it all the way down, and it was just a waste of so much investigative time. It really was. Detectives nowadays, investigators, agents who weren't around back then have no idea how much easier their job is because they don't have to waste all that time doing that type of report writing. But, you know, the Secret Service is not just about protecting the president. It's a multifaceted organization that has other responsibilities. Tell us, the audience, about some of the stuff Secret Service does that nobody really thinks they do.
Yeah. So we talked on a second ago, the protective intelligence, which people probably think, okay, there's a threat, they're going to do that. So you got the protection, the physical protection, and then you got the intelligence piece, which people probably know about. But the Secret Service was actually founded in 1865 to combat counterfeit currency, because at that time, 2/3 of the currency in circulation was counterfeit. And so I think, if I had to guess, I'm thinking they were judge, juror, and executioner back in the day in the 1860s. I think when they caught these guys, they probably handled business pretty quickly. And I think there were only 11 of them. It was called the Pinkerton Group, right? And so that was one of the last things that Abraham Lincoln did before he, met his demise. And so basically, back then, the Secret Service wasn't even a protective outfit. I mean, he was being protected by the U.S. Army. And so it wasn't until 1901, after McKinley got assassinated, that Congress was like, man, we got to do something. We got to protect these guys, because you had Lincoln and Garfield and McKinley, and then so the Secret Service becoming a protective outfit, which is what we're known for, which are what all the movies are made about. But basically, it's an investigative arm, and I spent 3 years in the counterfeit squad, and I absolutely loved it because I had been a cop and I loved it. And I was in my 20s. I was still full of piss and vinegar. And so we were out running and gunning, and it was street level crimes, and it was fun. Was I making a major dent in white collar crime? No, but I didn't care because I was having fun, and I was making somewhat of a difference, right? Because we would sometimes get involved in homicides or kidnappings. One time we ran across a guy. This is crazy. We ran across a guy mean, if you could draw or take a picture of what a serial killer looks like, this dude was it, right? And he was running, what do you call it? Like, like a Blockbuster. It wasn't Blockbuster, but when you go out and rent movies, some of these people aren't going to know what I'm talking about. When you go out and rent a VHS tape, and this guy was running like a mom and pop VHS place. Wasn't a porn shop. It was just a regular thing. But I can't remember all the details of it, but I just remember it was started with a counterfeit case. And of course, you guys know how people flip on each other. And one thing led to the next. And it turned out this guy was wanted for suspicion of homicide over his wife, which is usually how it goes, right? We locked him up on federal charges, and I watched 2 New York City detectives come down to Charlotte, North Carolina, and serve him with first-degree murder charges. And that dude had he had ice water in his veins. It was I wasn't scared of him, but it was spooky. You know what I mean? It was like this guy was, here he was in this small town in North Carolina, basically laundering money, for lack of better terms, with this counterfeit money, and was wanted for homicide. And so you just never knew what you're going to run across. And that was obviously a pretty extreme case. I also had a time where we had a snitch that told us he knew where Eric Rudolph was. And I'm like, dude, you're crazy. I thought Eric Rudolph was out in Montana or something, but turns out he got found by a rookie cop going through the trash at a Piggly Wiggly. And my buddy Alex and I think we had a beat on this, and we were so convinced of it that we called our supervisor on a Sunday and said, can we please come to your house? Because we really thought we had something. And so we went to his house on a Sunday afternoon and was like, look, John, I think we can get Eric Rudolph. And how awesome would that be for 2 Secret Service guys working a counterfeit case to grab Eric Rudolph? And there's like 100 FBI agents up in the woods running around. And he's like, I don't care about that. Just give me the plant. And I was like, are you kidding? So he shut it down. Now, I don't know if that would have ever happened or not, because you guys know how snitches are. But he did get caught in North Carolina about an hour from where we were working and not in Montana. So I will always wonder what if.
Oh. Talk about the Mac Daddy of all arrests, right?
That would have been crazy.
And the way
So that was kind of a long story, but the Secret Service does a lot. They do white collar crime. Everything's gone digital now. Like, I really enjoyed the counterfeit stuff, the street level stuff. I hated working the bank fraud and credit card stuff. I didn't like that. But now everything's gone digital. And one of the things that the Secret Service does really well that I think people will be surprised at is the child exploitation stuff. The kiddie porn, as you guys know, is horrible. And the Secret Service has a forensics unit that is, in my opinion, second to none. And they're doing really good work.
Yeah, they talk about stepping up into a field that you wouldn't think the Secret Service is involved in. And with what's going on today, we've had, Scotty, countless shows on that horrible situation of human trafficking and child trafficking. And what a better investigative body to dive into that than the Secret Service with what they can do. And, I can imagine the technology they have to track them down, and it's needed. I think that's one thing that all of us can agree on is so much needed, more and more and more. And if they're involved, go get them.
Yeah, obviously I don't want to give away any tradecraft secrets here, but it's like they have some really good tools. And HSI, HSI is another good one. Of course, the Bureau's so big, they do so many. They've kind of gone into like the counterintelligence, CT world, counter terrorism stuff. But they're good at what they do too, obviously. But like I would say the Secret Service and HSI, and the only reason I say that is because I don't know that much about what the Bureau does as far as with that stuff. I know what they do with the CT stuff, but the Secret Service, I guess I was trying to answer your question, like what the Secret Service do that the general layperson wouldn't think about, and that to me that's it. I mean, it's like the things that these guys do on a daily basis. First of all, I couldn't sit in a room and look at all that stuff. I've seen some things I wish I, could unsee. I never really, seeing the dead bodies or whatever never really bothered me. But seeing some of that other stuff is just like that's just next level evil.
Tough on the soul. It's tough on the soul to think that human beings can do that, and to have to see the result of what they do can be shocking. I realize in my time as a detective, I never wanted to work on child cases. I just didn't. I stay away from that stuff, but it was not for me because I didn't have a stomach for it.
I don't blame.
Yeah. So we had a period of time in our government in general where law enforcement, and I'll just leave it at that, in the past few years, law enforcement was minimized. They were beaten up in the press. Secret Service is no exception. You've had some incidents here and there where people have jumped all over the agency. How do you see it today and going forward with the current leadership and philosophy? How do you see the Secret Service doing right now?
Well, I think they're headed in the right direction. I know Sean Curran fairly well, the director. He's an amazing guy and an amazing agent. I will be honest, I don't think Sean would have been my first pick. And I don't mind saying that publicly because I call balls and strikes. That's just what I do. But having said that, he's in there, and so I support it. Okay, I'm not saying I wouldn't have picked him. I think Bongino would have probably been my first pick because I used to work with Dan, and I know what Dan brings to the table. Dan is a no-nonsense door kicker, really, as far as if it's in here, it's coming out here, and I think that's what's needed because some of the DEI stuff and this touchy-feely crap, I think Sean's a little bit more polished than Dan and I. That's probably why he got the job, although Dan's doing pretty well for himself, too. But I think Sean is on the right track. Again, he's in the position that he's in because he is a little bit more polished than I am. But I think you can be polished and be a no-nonsense guy at the same time. You don't have to necessarily just be so raw and so brash like I can be and like Trump can be, right? That's what I love about J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance has got that Trump-esque about him, but he's a little bit more fluid in the way he talks, So I think anything's better than what we had because I do believe that DEI played a role in July 13th to a degree. I don't know if I'm right, but I feel like I am. And what I want to say is this, and I'll be quiet about it, is the standard is the standard. If you're going to become a Navy SEAL and you're going to go to BUD/S, they don't care what color your skin is, and they don't even care if you're a female. Can you pass? But there's not a female standard. There's not a man's standard, right? There's a standard. As long as you can meet the standard, and I don't know if there's even been a female SEAL. That's an easy, example. But or special forces or, whatever, even Secret Service. If I work with plenty of really good female agents. I want to be very clear. I'm not crapping on women there. I work with one of my best sergeants at the police department was a woman. There is a place in law enforcement for everybody. Are you competent? Are you capable? That's it. I don't care what your gender is. I don't care what your skin color is. I need to know when I'm going through this door if you've got my 6. And if you do, let's go. And if you don't, then I need somebody that I can trust. That's all.
100%. So well said. And we all feel that way. Dan and I both worked with exceptional female detectives, officers, whatever, that I'd pick them over some guys I've worked with. It's been damn sure.
All backgrounds. I don't care if your skin is green. If you're coming to help me out when I need it and you do the job, you're my brother or sister. That's
right. That's what I say on my podcast a lot of times. I'm like, I just like to say the standard is the standard, right? Like there's a standard, and can you meet it? And if you can, you're on the team, and if you can't, you're not, and that's okay. I always like to say black, white, green, or purple. I think that's a phrase I got from my father growing up. It doesn't matter. The point is, what we're trying to say is it doesn't matter. I don't care if you're gay, straight. I don't care if you're transgender. I don't give a crap about any of that outside social stuff. When we go to work, are you able to bring your A game? And if you can, let's get it on. And if you can't, I'd like to have somebody else. That's all.
So well said. Well, you teed up the next part so well. It's kind of like you have your own show. It's kind of weird how you did that.
Yeah, funny, right?
Right? It was great. So you get out, and all of us have faced that day, Scott, of it's time to go. It's time to, pull the pin, whatever term you want to use. You do that, and now have a super successful show, Scott Bryson BTS, Beyond the Service. Tell us all about that, your guests, what you got going on, all that about your show.
Well, thank you for saying that. I was a Secret Service agent for 25 years, and for 25 years I couldn't say a whole lot because of the Hatch Act primarily. And so my cousin has a podcast that he does, and he had been trying to get me on. He's like, "Hey, when you retire, I'd like to interview you." I'm like, "Okay." Well, 2 years went by, and I just didn't, make the time or whatever. Then Trump gets shot, and he called me and he goes, "Hey, man, it's time to crap or get off the pot." I'm like, "Yep, let's do it." So he interviewed me, and it just felt cathartic. I think it just felt good to talk about some stuff and to be able to, for the first time in a long time, just say some things out loud that I think we all think from time to time. Like I kind of just did just now, because when you're, on the job, you're kind of afraid to say some of that stuff, even though your intentions are good. But people, they twist your words, and it's content versus context. I'm like, come on, guys, you know what I'm saying. But you just kind of have to, you have a family to feed, and you have a pension, so you kind of become something you don't necessarily want to become, and you a little bit more neutral sometimes, I think. And so for me, I just wanted to get some stuff off my chest. I am a man of faith. I am a sinner of epic proportions. But I love my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I love my family, and I love my country. And I just want to somehow, without sounding too cliche, I just want to help people, because I think there's, life is hard. Life by itself is hard. Then you become a law enforcement person, and I don't care what capacity. Law enforcement is hard. It's hard on the person. It's hard on the soul. It's hard on the spirit. It's hard on the marriage. It's hard on the kids. And so I think basically I just want to, in some weird way, kind of like Sean Ryan does, just tell stories that are historic in nature because they're of value, but yet it's an individual story. And whatever wisdom that I have accumulated or knowledge at this point, I just want to sort of pass it on. And again, I don't want to sound cliche because I don't have it all figured out, but part of it's like selfish and cathartic. And then part of it, I feel like, is I just want to help people. And that's what we're trying to do.
Well, that's very honorable. The best people, the best professionals that we deal with are the humble. You're very humble. You've been a front row spectator and an active participant in some of the more interesting things that people could ever hear about. And you've had the impact of what it's done to you and the difficulties and all that kind of stuff. You've had challenges. You've had a life. The lessons of which are worth sharing. And people have a taste for that. They want to hear real stories from people. They want to hear, how'd you deal with that? What was that like? What was he like as a president? What was she like as a first lady? What was it like to be behind the scenes of the White House? I mean, these are fascinating glimpses that people love to hear. And you have an overall perspective on it, too. You're not just telling, insider baseball about the president that likes to, jump into the White House pool naked at 2:00 in the morning. You don't want to, that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about real stuff. So I think it's amazing that you're doing what you're doing, and thank you for doing it. And I love your motivations for it.
Well, I really appreciate that. I touched on it a little while ago, difference between leadership and management, right? I like to say, I manage my finances and I lead people. I'm not in a leadership role right now, and that's okay, but I was. And I've been a part of team atmospheres, college football, the police department, roll calls, awesome. You got to have thick skin to be in that room, and then counter assault team. Like, I missed that camaraderie, that brotherhood, like-minded, you gravitate toward each other. Right. And so, I think that it's just, I think people can tell when you're being fake or you're putting on or whatever. I think what people like about what I'm doing thus far, and we're kind of in our infancy. We've only been doing this since August, and we're growing really good on Instagram and TikTok. Our YouTube channel's a little slow, but that's the way it goes, and we're building it, and we're very we're confident in what we're doing because we're just telling the truth. Like I like to say, we speak truth to power. I think one of you guys said that a while ago. You're going to tell the truth, and that's all I'm trying to do. I just want to tell the truth. you know? And I just like, I think I probably speak for all three of us. I miss the days of watching the news and then saying, okay, this is what happened today. And then I figure out if I like it or dislike it, you know? And I basically almost just about quit watching Fox News. Once they got rid of Tucker Carlson, I'm like, this is some bullcrap. Like, both sides are just as guilty. And so I think that's why people are turning to podcasts. They're looking for the truth. And that's what I'm trying to do. Do I have it all figured out? No. Am I a theologian? Heck no. But I'm trying to share my life experiences to maybe help somebody else so they don't go down a path I maybe went down. Or, you know, I like to learn from my mistakes. So maybe can we learn from those mistakes of somebody else? Because otherwise it's just wasted.
And you're looking at your guest list is very similar to ours. You know, you got Navy SEALs, you got law enforcement, you know, high profile lawyers, all that. And you probably get what we get out of it. You know, when we think we had a good career or a good day, and then you hear some of these stories, you're like, okay, never mind. You know, you hear these, you know, these absolute just 100% warriors and heroes. And to hear things firsthand, and Scott, you know, I want your opinion on these and what you feel during your show. You get a different outlook of these people and what they do when, you know, you're not reading it, you're not hearing an interview, when they're sitting in front of you telling these stories. It's a different impact on you, right?
Yeah, 100%. You know, one of the biggest regrets I have is not serving in the military. Now, I've served my country for 30 years as a law enforcement. I'm proud of that. Very honorable career, right? But when I graduated high school in 1990, there hadn't been a conflict since Vietnam. And so like, I thought you play whatever sport you're playing for as long as you can play it. If you're going to go to a trade school or college, you do that, then you get a job and you get a wife and you get a family. Like, the military just didn't cross my mind because there was no conflict. Now, I was the father of three when 9/11 happened. And I can promise you this, had 9/11 happened a decade earlier, I would have tried to become a Green Beret or a SEAL or something like that. I don't know if I would have made it, but I would have definitely tried. And so I live with that regret too. But as an older man, I've tried to like, okay, God doesn't do, if I'm going to profess to be a Christian, I have to walk it out. Talk is cheap. So it's like, God doesn't do random and God doesn't make mistakes. So I had the career path that I had, and I just have to be at peace with that. And it's taken me a long time to get there, but I know what I did was honorable. But like, I do feel the same way when I interviewed these guys, like Carl Higbee was a Navy SEAL for, I think, 8 years. And now he's doing great on Newsmax. Like, Carl's a friend of mine because of Eric Trump. But like, I look at him, I'm like, wow, like, I'm just enamored. It's very hard to move the needle for me. Like, I just don't get impressed very much. I think I've become jaded because of all the things I got to do and all the things I got to see. You know, at one point in my life, I would have like probably fallen all over myself if I had a chance to meet Michael Jordan. And I love Michael Jordan, but like, operators are way more impressive to me than NBA play. You know what I mean? And I don't mean disrespect to MJ or whoever else, but it's just like, you know, it's like when I was a kid, I looked at the sports figures one way. And now that I'm a grown man, I'm like, wow, these operators are like the real deal, you know?
No, cannot agree with you more. Tom and I have been blown away by some of the people that we've had on the show and who we've had the opportunity and the honor to meet through the show and during our careers. And it's humbling, and they are great people. And one of the reasons we do the show is we want to highlight their stories and let the people of the world know that the United States of America and other countries, but the United States of America has exceptional people protecting it, looking out for it, and risking their lives, safety, home lives, all of it to look out so that you can turn your burger on Memorial Day outside your house, so that you can go to Disney. It's all for that. And so thank them, appreciate them, and thank the Lord that we have them, right?
Amen.
And Scott was one of them. That's why you're on the show. You know, we didn't just pick you for the, you know, because you're cute. You know, we picked you for what you've done in your career. So you're part of that team. And I don't just mean that, Scott. I mean, you know, it's our joke. Need it. And Dan does too. What you did for the length of time that you did is special. It's not to be taken lightly. You know, the mindset that's needed and the dedication and the love of this country and the love of what you do is something to be admired. And you are, you know, to these two guys in front of you right now. So thank you for everything you did.
Well, listen, fellas, first of all, I have a face for radio, so let's be clear about that. Okay.
Danny says that every time.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
here's that. But I am humbled by your kind words, but I don't feel that way at all whatsoever. I guess I'm jaded because I've seen behind the curtain and I know a lot of this stuff is smoke and mirrors. Now, I'm not discounting some of the things that I did and some of the things that go on. I get what you're saying, but it's just hard for me to, I don't know. It's just hard for me to feel the same way. So I appreciate you saying that.
Well, we want to thank you for your time. We want to thank you for everything that you're doing. We look forward to revisiting with you again in the future, hearing more about how the show is going. We'll be watching it. It's Behind the Service. Scott Bryson. Beyond the Service. I'm sorry.
Yep.
I should get it right if I'm going to say that.
My wife says, she's like, BTS, that means behind the scenes. I'm like, no, beyond the service. Like, I'm beyond the service. This is my next chapter.
Well, that's fantastic. We wish you all the best in everything that you're doing. Good health, and may God continue to shine upon you and your family. You deserve it. And we're just grateful to have had you on and you spent time with us, Scott. Thank you.
Well, it's very nice to meet both of you guys, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Don't go anywhere because we want to run a couple of things by you. Okay. But this is a special time of our show that we say a prayer for our law enforcement officers, our military vets, their families, and victims of crimes out there. Please keep them all in your prayers. Don't forget about them. Our law enforcement officers, military vets do a thankless job and all volunteer to do it. No one gets forced into this world. They want to do it. They want to serve. So the least we can do is just shoot them a prayer, making sure they're safe and keeping them healthy and safe and their family strong. So make sure you do that. One last thing, goals.com, tacticalgear.com. Make sure you go to them, check them out. Two big sponsors of ours. Our YouTube channel, YouTube at Gold Shields, and every audio channel you can think of. And, of course, our website, thegoldshieldshow.com. For my partner, Dan Murphy, for Scott Bryson, an incredible show. Such insight into a very dangerous job, the Secret Service, for so long. And his top shelf YouTube channel, Scott Bryson BTS. Make sure you check it out. Don't forget. Don't go anywhere. We got overtime coming up in a minute. But everyone out there, stay safe. We'll see everybody soon.
Patriot is a premium whiskey hard seltzer. We've carefully crafted 4 flavors that not only taste exceptional, but can be enjoyed on any occasion, anytime. We're committed to giving back 5% of all profits to the core groups we call the backbone of America. We are proud to help those who serve our great country. This is America's Seltzer, the brand that stands for quality, community, and the American spirit.
Hey, welcome to the Overtime, the OT. Cops love overtime, don't they, Tom?
They damn well better. Pays the bills.
You're right. You're not kidding. Speaking of paying the bills, we want to thank our friends from Fairline Security Services. Fairline, our sponsor for our overtime on every show. Fairlineservices.com. Go to it if you have a company that you need armed or unarmed protective services, executive protection. They are a upper Midwest company growing nationally quickly because they have high standards, great training, great people. Do yourself a favor if you're looking to secure anything. Give them a nod. Check them out. You'll be happy you did. Fairlineservices.com. Tom, what'd you think about our discussion with our new friend?
Yeah, you know what? When you talk to Secret Service agents, it's a different conversation than we have with SEALs, with law enforcement, with cops, NYPD, whatever. It's just a different conversation when their lives can be done in a minute to protect someone else. Mm-hmm. Yes, cops will do that, but not that directly. Right. And it's a calling to what they do. And I love hearing, I'm a big, kind of behind the scenes person, backstage stuff.
Yep.
So when you hear little things about presidents or families, it's cool.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And we'd love to push them on more of that kind of stuff. But, the whole concept of Secret Service is that the presidents and their family can be themselves because they have to be during the course of a 4 or 8 year term. They have to be able to live their own normal life off camera and behind the scenes. And Secret Service agents are supposed to keep what they see secret. And not all of them do. And you can tell Scotty Bryson is a guy that tries to honor that, except to maybe give credit where credit is due. And that's a sign of an honorable person.
Oh, absolutely. You know, the other great thing about talking to them, and we've done it before, we've had other agents on, Dan. So many of them have a great historical perspective of the Secret Service and know the history of it. And you hear all that coming from and just rattle it off, not kind of grasping at historical events, but knowing dates and whys and how it all happened is so interesting that a lot of people don't know about, you know, when it comes to the Secret Service. And to get that type of a professional perspective of their agencies is also great to hear. And he's just a great guy. He's just down to earth, normal, successful show now. He's definitely a winner.
And, you know, we tend to take for granted in America that the president shows up on TV. He's at this meeting over here. The sheer volume of work that goes into a move, and the president moves, and this president moves all the time. The sheer volume of people, logistics, everything that has to move when the president moves to ensure the continuity of leadership of our country is a massive undertaking. And the Secret Service owns all of that. They coordinate with the military, with every agency you can imagine, with the heads of state of other countries, with the military and police services of other nations around the world. It is an unbelievable amount of work that they do. And then they've got to follow up on everybody who decides to be a keyboard cowboy and type in, I hate him, he should die. You know what I mean? This is the kind of stuff they do, but I'm glad he sent that message out. Anybody who hears this, it's good to know that the Secret Service, they'll get you. If you want to be that guy, they're so sophisticated in their technology and their protocols and processes. They're going to get you. You're not going to get away with it. Don't be stupid.
No way. And you know what? It's too bad. I thought of this question after we already went past, you know, talking about it, and I actually wrote it down if it came back up in a conversation. But it must be such a challenge to deal with Trump because he improvises so much. He doesn't have a script. He could just, you know, the plan is to walk straight. He's going left to right 4 or 5 different times, you know, and they have to adjust to that with their snipers, their field guys, their close protection guys. All of them have to be on a dime reacting to what he does. And that's got to be stressful too. You know, wondering what the hell is he going to do? Where's he going to go? Who's he going to talk to? You know, and that's another just, you know, wild thing about the Secret Service, to be able to think on your toes and be ready for absolutely anything, especially when you have someone the personality of President Trump.
You know, looking back to the origins of it, it's interesting you brought that up. All Secret Service agents know Alan Pinkerton's role with Abraham Lincoln. I read a great book. As you know, I like to read books. And one of the stories in it was in 1861, on the way from Springfield, Illinois to Washington, D.C. for his inauguration. Abraham Lincoln had so many death threats, so very real death threats. Alan Pinkerton had a team that went on the ground in several locations, infiltrated areas, infiltrated the southern groups that were looking to kill him on his route. And it was only a couple of train routes in the whole country. And Lincoln had to get smuggled into Washington, D.C. in a sleeper car of a train, dressed as somebody else, surrounded by undercover operatives on the train. This is crazy stuff. But this was the origins of protecting the leader of the free world, who was trying to hold our nation together. So Alan Pinkerton really did help ensure that Abraham Lincoln would live to be president to keep our union together in the 1860s. I mean, where would we be if he hadn't had that? He might have gotten killed. Who knows where this country would be, right?
Oh, yeah. Same thing with, you know, after the Kennedy assassination and then that transfer, the same thing. You know, if that blinks with the tensions that were going on with Russia and Cuba and everything at the time, if that took a pause at any moment, who knows where we would have been, you know, as a country, as a world, if, like I said, and it wasn't elected guys, it was 15 agents on the ground that had to get that all done. And for the reasons you just stated. The security of the world is at hand, and you think about that having the possibility of happening at any moment that figure is out in public.
Yeah. The tension and the stress, you see them, they walk around in suits, everybody goes, oh, they got an easy job. Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
No way.
You're spending 12 hours on your feet, and at any moment, your head is on a swivel. You've got to watch a million things. You got to be aware. You got to anticipate the unexpected, and you have to be able to have a plan for it. So I give a lot of credit to them, and I think Scott did a good job in encapsulating what that's like. You miss holidays, you miss birthdays, you miss all that stuff. And they do it all to protect the leader of the free world, to ensure that our nation maintains that leadership so the world looks at us and says they're stable.
And you think about it, just to finish up with this, Dan, the technology that's out there, bad guys have technology too. And that makes it more dangerous. Not just the good guys have technology, they got it too. And they think outside the box, and they come up with crazy plans that they all have to adjust to. And Scott just, gives that just confidence. Even now, even after he's retired, you hear it in his voice. And that's so cool, because they're a special group of people.
They are. And we owe them a debt of gratitude for keeping the president, the leader of our country. Forget where you are politically. Doesn't matter. The U.S. president and his family have to be protected, as do our previous presidents. Period.
Absolutely.
National imperative.
Hey, great show as always. Again, that's it. I mean, we nailed it. We keep doing this, buddy.
It ain't us, right? It's the guests. It really is. Scotty Bryson, tremendous man. Great to meet him. Can't wait to meet him in person. And we thank you, as always, our audience, for tuning in, for giving us a reason to do this. We appreciate. We get great feedback all the time, and occasionally we get a little, hey, why don't you try this? Hey, we listen. We want the feedback, right?
No doubt about it. Keep them coming, everyone. On our website, go to contacts, let us know what's going on. Fairline, Galls, Tactical Gear, Streamlight, Patriot, newspapers.com. Thank God for all of them. And we got a couple of surprises coming up soon, Dan, but we're not going to tell anyone about that.
Yep. When they're ready, when it brews. Yeah.
Oh, good. Hey, Dan, have a great night, buddy. Thank you again. Everyone out there, stay safe. TheGoldShieldShow.com. Check the website out. Keep following us, subscribe, all that good stuff. Have a great night, everybody.
All right. Take care.